everything is it.
Yeah.
Including everything that appears as not it.
Yeah.
Or
Including that energetic contraction that really feels like it's looking out at life. But that's not the looker. It's an experience appearing in life. Most people walk around believing, or that is the center of the world, and then the isn't part of life is covered up. Everyone's scared of non-existence. They think, oh, non-existence is something I get to when I die, but non-existence is here. Existence needs non-existence. There needs to be the two in order for this to happen. So it's like the person then runs from this idea of non-existence because it only believes that this is real and that it's in relationship with it.
Sorry, I'm outside. Sorry. So everything that, so you tell me if this is important, is everything that appears as not it, or it arises in it? Does it matter?
Well, it's easier to say in it sometimes with language, but no, it doesn't matter. Everything is it, and it's not really in it because there's no out of it. But it's easier to say that in language sometimes, like, but everything equally, even the illusion of self is equally it. All the dramas of the person and the ideas and the falling and the destruction and the growth of the person is it. And there's not really a solid person ever there. It just seems that way when that contraction is there. In every instant, it's totally fresh. So nothing dies. There's nothing that could possibly die. Even that body is changing in every instant. It just feels that way because life has become only real, and that separate person believes in subject-object. It believes that there is something in relationship with something else. It's such a beautiful dance. But it doesn't mean that this will improve the makeup of that person. But there's a movement from being that to everything, and that's the freedom. But it doesn't mean that the person will improve. But it is a totally radical change, and it is what I would describe as just home. But it doesn't mean that the person won't do all its little dirties, because the person will always still climb for pleasure, and that's how we screw other people over, is when we're climbing for pleasure we step on other people. We sometimes help them as well, but you kind of like the flower, when it's trying to grow above the others, it has to sort of push the others out of the way.
So ultimately, there's being free of separate self. Ultimately, is no better than not being free of separate self.
Ultimately, but it does fundamentally change things in a way, because there's nothing anymore experiencing life. So life goes back to being free. When there's that illusion there, it feels like there's something that can possibly die, and it always has a sense of discomfort, like, shit, I need to get somewhere, I need to be something. It always has this kind of running energy, but ultimately that doesn't matter, because even that is free as well. Every particle, every tiny ounce of suffering is made up of total freedom. But it does seem to fundamentally change things in that instance, and then in a sense it doesn't anymore, but in that instant it changes things because life is set free again. But it sounds like it was always free, but it really felt like it wasn't when that person was dreaming that it was separate. It's like that dream no longer veils anything. The person carries on, but it's no longer something which is subject to birth and death, and it's no longer the experiencer of a separate world.
And so it's absolutely perfect to be perceiving myself or oneself as trapped, or perfect.
Not, yeah.
Either it's
not
the same.
Yeah, it is the same, because even in that trappedness, now, if you feel the trappedness now, or a sense of contraction now, that contraction actually doesn't exist. It is everywhere. It's total boundlessness. It goes on forever. But when that person is trapped, it can create very uncomfortable feelings when it goes negative, the story. It's not always negative, it changes between positive and negative, but it can tell very negative things. And I think as humans, we're changing really rapidly. So we're going through a bit of an uncomfortable age. Like if you put any animal in the change like we've gone through in the last like 500 years, it would be uncomfortable in any animal. And so the instrument in which life is being looked through is going through an uncomfortable change. Well, it's going through a really radical change. So it's like its wiring is confused. The human generally has a sense of being a bit lost, because before it lived in groups and it was like following a group and belonged to a community. It's in a way, it's like in a group, but in a very solitary way. We're living in these, like, we're living in nuclear families or very cut off families. Sometimes even don't have family and friends, but yet we live in a city. Like we live within amongst millions and millions of people. So we're changing really rapidly, and it gives the chemical reaction in the body, a sense of feeling lost and not in the right place. And then added onto that, when the person believes that's who it is, that drama becomes very uncomfortable. If that's not belonging to anyone, then that doesn't really matter, because it's just another appearance appearing in everything. But when it's somebody that feels lost and feels a little bit confused and doesn't know its position in the world, then it becomes very uncomfortable, and we're experiencing so much more depression than we ever have done. And I think that's to do with the radical changes that we've gone through. Like we're having so much information, so our brains are taking on so much more information. There's all these things that are creating unhappy people, and then along with that, we take it personally. And why I say we're unhappy people, it's because chemically we're not doing so many things that used to chemically release us pleasure. Like a big thing of what released humans pleasure was the social side of life and living in a community, and we're not really doing that anymore, even if we live in a city. We're kind of changing from being very communal animals to singular animals. The same with relationships. We're not managing to mate for life anymore. We're becoming more and more separated. So we're kind of going through all these changes which are creating uncertain and unsure chemical reactions in the body. And then on top of that, it's taken to be who you are as a fixed somebody in relationship with life. And so there's a lot of unhappy or uncomfortable people out there. And it's the combination of the two. The person is less balanced than it has been in a long time, and less stable, even though it's crazy because we're in a society where we're financially more stable. That doesn't matter. An idea that we're financially more stable doesn't matter. So we've got that. And then we've got this added thing where it's this energetic contraction where we think that's us, and we think that person's got to be happy and got to live a certain life and got to have certain interactions. We're also doing things as well by living in these cities and the transport and the fumes and the food. We're doing many things which will make the body have less pleasurable chemical reactions. It's crazy. Like a lot of studies have been made that before washing machines and hoovers, people were actually happier. Like these instruments made people more unhappy, but we believe they make us more happy. But this is talking about happiness. This isn't talking about the end of the contraction of self. We've just done things that have made us more unhappy, but we'll go through a change and then we'll be happy to be singular animals. We're just going through a change. It's an uncomfortable changer. You can see it in our cities. And then our food, geez, what we eat. I just have to go and correct Khaleesi. She's just barking.
Lisa, thank you for calling or taking my call.
My pleasure, Bradley.
It's great seeing you.
Enjoy the sunshine. Bye.
Okay, bye.